Dr. Helen Carter rubbed her tired eyes and stared at the computer screen. She had been working for 12 hours straight, trying to decode strange signals that kept coming through space. The Kepler research station was quiet except for the soft hum of machines. Outside the windows, the giant gas planet Jupiter 2 spun slowly, its orange and red clouds swirling like paint in water. Helen was the best language expert on the station. For the past 3 weeks, the same weird signal had been bouncing around their equipment. At first, everyone thought it was just space noise, but Helen noticed patterns. The signal repeated every few hours, and some parts were always the same. That meant someone was trying to talk. She took another sip of cold coffee and went back to work. The computer was trying to match the signal patterns to known alien languages. Earth had made contact with 47 different alien species since joining the galactic community 5 years ago. Most of them were friendly. Some were strange. A few were dangerous. The signal crackled through the speakers again. This time, something was different. Helen sat up straight and turned up the volume. The computer screen flashed green. It had found a match. "Oh my God," Helen whispered. She reached for her communication device and pressed the emergency button. "Captain Morrison, please come to the language lab right away. This is urgent." Captain Jake Morrison arrived within minutes. He was a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes. He had been running the research station for 3 years, and Helen had never seen him look worried. But he looked worried now. "What have you got, Helen?" Jake asked. "It's a distress call," Helen said, pointing at the screen. The computer matched. It's Zephyrian language patterns. They're one of the peaceful species from the outer rim. Jake frowned. "Zephyrians? They're those crystal beings, right? What could they want with us?" Helen played the decoded message. A strange musical voice filled the room. The computer translated the words into English text on the screen. "To any humans who receive this message, we are the Zephyrian Collective. Our homeworld is under attack. The Krolex Empire has invaded our system. They are enslaving our people and destroying our planets. We have heard stories about humans. Stories that say you come from a death world. Stories that say you are strong fighters. We do not know if these stories are true, but we are desperate. If you can help us, we will give you anything we have. Please, if there are any humans listening, we need your help. Our children are dying. Time is running out." The message repeated over and over. Helen and Jake listened in silence. When it finished, Jake was quiet for a long time. "How long has this been broadcasting?" he asked. "At least 3 weeks," Helen said. "Maybe longer. The signal is weak. It's been bouncing off relay stations across 3 sectors of space." Jake walked to the window and looked out at the gas giant. "The Krolex Empire," he said slowly. "I've heard of them. They're bad news. Really bad news." Helen nodded. "The Galactic database says they've conquered over 60 different species in the last 200 years. They use slave labor to strip mine entire planets. Most of the Galactic Council is too scared to fight them. And now they're attacking the Zephyrians," Jake said. He turned back to Helen. "Send this message to Earth Command immediately. Use the fastest transmission method we have." "Already done," Helen said. "I sent it as soon as the computer finished." "The translation," Jake smiled. "Good thinking. How long until we get a response?" 6 hours if we're lucky. 8 if the bureaucrats get involved. The response came in 4 hours. Admiral Lisa Brooks herself appeared on the main communication screen. She was a serious woman with short brown hair and sharp eyes. Behind her, Helen could see the busy command center at Luna Base. "Captain Morrison," Admiral Brooks said, "we've reviewed the Zephyrian message. This is a difficult situation." "Yes, ma'am," Jake replied. "What are your orders?" We're calling an emergency meeting of the Defense Council. But I want your opinion first. You've been out there longer than most of us. What do you think about this?" Jake was quiet for a moment. "The Zephyrians are good people, Admiral. I met some of their diplomats last year. They're peaceful, artistic, and they've never hurt anyone. If the Kroleks are attacking them, it's just because they're easy targets. And what about us?" Admiral Brooks asked. "Earth has 3 colony worlds and maybe 20 major warships. The Kroleks have hundreds of ships and thousands of years of military experience. What makes you think we can help?" "Because we're human," Jake said simply. "We don't give up when things get hard." Admiral Brooks smiled. "That's what I was hoping you'd say. Stand by for further orders." The screen went dark. Helen looked at Jake with worry in her eyes. "Do you really think we can help them?" she asked. "I don't know," Jake said honestly. "But I know we have to try." 2 hours later, the orders came through. Earth was sending Task Force Reaper to investigate the situation. The task force included the heavy cruiser Vengeance, 2 destroyers named Havoc and Thunder, and a full company of colonial marines. They would travel to Zephyrian space and see what could be done. Captain Danny Clark of the destroyer Havoc was chosen to lead the naval forces. Colonel Ryan Hayes would command the Marines. They were both experienced fighters who had served in the border wars against space pirates. As the news spread through the station, Helen felt a mix of excitement and fear. She had spent her whole career studying alien languages and cultures. She had always believed that knowledge and understanding were the keys to peace in the galaxy. But now, it seemed like Earth was preparing for war. "Captain," she said to Jake, "what if we're making a mistake? What if the Kroleks are too strong for us?" Jake put a hand on her shoulder. "Helen, 5 years ago, the Galactic Council thought humans were just another primitive species from a dangerous planet. They called Earth a death world because of our weather, our animals, and our history of warfare. They thought those things made us weak. But they didn't." Helen said, double quotes, "No, they didn't. They made us strong. They made us survivors. And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly what the Zephyrians need right now." In space, the distress call continued, broadcasting. But now, someone was listening. Someone who lived on a world where storms could destroy cities, where animals hunted in packs, and where an entire species had learned to fight for everything they had. The Zephyrians had asked for help from Deathworlders. They were about to find out what that really meant. The Kroleks invasion fleet hung in space like a swarm of metal insects. Admiral Krexther stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching his soldiers load another transport ship with Zephyrian slaves. The crystalline beings were perfect workers. They needed no food, only light to survive, and their bodies could withstand the harsh conditions of deep space mining. "Sir," his communications officer said, "we're detecting 3 ships dropping out of hyperspace at the edge of the system." Krexther barely looked up from his reports. "Traitors, probably. Send them the standard warning. Tell them to leave or be destroyed." The Kroleks had been conquering worlds for over 1,000 years. They knew every species in this part of the galaxy. Most fled at the first sight of their war fleet. The few that tried to fight were crushed quickly and completely. "Sir, they're responding," the communications officer said. He sounded confused. "The message is ... unusual." "Put it on speakers," Krexther ordered. A calm human voice filled the bridge. "This is Captain Danny Clark of the Earth vessel Havoc. You have exactly 60 seconds to begin pulling back from this system before we show you why our planet is called a Class 12 Death World. We strongly suggest you listen to this warning." Krexther's 4 eyes blinked in surprise. He had never heard of humans before. "Earth vessel? What species are they?" His science officer checked the computer. "Unknown, sir. The database shows they joined the Galactic Council only 5 years ago." Their homeworld is listed as extremely dangerous due to violent weather, predatory animals, and constant geological activity. Deathworlders, Crexter laughed. Probably some primitive species that thinks their hard planet makes them tough. How many ships do they have? 3, sir. 1 heavy cruiser and 2 destroyers. Total crew estimated at 800. Crexter looked at his own fleet. 120 ships. Over 50,000 soldiers. The humans were either very brave or very stupid. Open fire, he ordered. Destroy them quickly. I want to finish loading the slaves before the next transport arrives. The Krolex battle line opened up with their main weapons. Bright energy beams shot across space toward the 3 human ships. Crexter expected to see the small vessels explode into pieces. Instead, something impossible happened. The human ships accelerated directly toward the Krolex fleet. Not away from the weapon's fire, but into it. Their ships moved faster than anything their size should be able to move. They twisted and turned through the energy beams like dancers avoiding raindrops. What are they doing? Crexter demanded. His weapons officers stared at his screens. Sir, they're not following any known combat patterns. They're acting like they're attacking us directly. With 3 ships against 120? That's suicide. But the humans kept coming. The heavy cruiser Vengeance smashed into the Krolex formation like a hammer. Its weapons were small compared to Krolex battleships, but they fired constantly, hitting weak points and engine systems. The 2 destroyers split up and began attacking from different angles. Sir, we're getting reports from the fleet, the communications officer said. His voice was getting higher with panic. The human ships aren't keeping their distance. They're flying right next to our hulls. Some of our captains can't fire without hitting our own ships. Then the real surprise began. Small objects launched from the human vessels. At first, Crexter thought they were missiles. Then his scanners showed the truth. Those are people, his science officer whispered. There, launching their crew members directly at our ships. The colonial marines wore powered armor that let them survive in space. They used small rockets and magnetic hooks to fly from ship to ship. Sergeant Amy Rodriguez led the first assault team. She landed on the hull of a Krolex cruiser and immediately began cutting through the armor with a plasma torch. All ships, we have borders, came the panicked voice over the fleet communication system. The humans are cutting holes in our hulls and fighting inside our ships. Crexter watched in horror as his formation fell apart. The humans didn't fight like any species he had ever seen. Instead of staying at safe distances and exchanging fire, they got as close as possible. They seemed to enjoy the danger. Captain Patricia Stone commanded the Vengeance. She flew her ship directly between 2 Krolex battleships and fired at both of them at the same time. When one of them tried to ram her, she used her engines to spin away at the last second. The 2 enemy ships crashed into each other instead. Sir, the humans are using our own ships as weapons against us, his tactical officer reported. They're making us hit each other. Inside the Krolex ships, the fighting was even more confusing. The Marines moved through the corridors like they were born for combat. They worked in small teams, using their weapons and tools in ways the Krolex had never seen. Private Ben Torres threw a grenade around a corner. Ben followed it by diving through the air and firing his rifle while upside down. The Krolex soldiers, who were used to careful, organized battles, didn't know how to respond to such wild tactics. These humans are insane, a Krolex captain radioed to the flagship. They're fighting like they don't care if they live or die. But that wasn't quite right. The humans did care about living. They were just willing to take risks that seemed impossible to other species. They had grown up on a world where everything was dangerous. To them, space combat was just another Tuesday, Colonel Ryan Hayes led his Marines through the corridors of a Krolex transport ship. They were trying to free the Zephyrian prisoners. The crystalline beings were kept in dark chambers, their natural light dimmed to keep them weak. "Ma'am, can you understand me?" Hayes asked one of the Zephyrian prisoners. The being's inner light flickered. "You ... you are the humans? The ones from the Death World?" "Yes, ma'am. We're here to help. But how? The Krolex are so many, and you are so few." Hayes smiled behind his helmet. "Where we come from, being outnumbered just means the fight is fair." The battle lasted 18 hours. When it was over, half of the Krolex fleet was destroyed. The other half was retreating as fast as their damaged engines could carry them. Admiral Krexther's flagship was drifting in space, its engines dead and its crew evacuated. Captain Clark opened a communication channel to all remaining Krolex ships. "This is the human fleet. You have 1 hour to leave this system completely. Any ship that stays will be destroyed. Any ship that comes back will be destroyed. Tell your empire that the Zephyrians are under human protection now." As the last Krolex vessels limped away, the Zephyrian survivors gathered on their remaining space stations. Elder Thalmer, their leader, sent a message to the human ships. "We do not understand how you did this thing," the message said. "Your ships are small, your numbers are few, yet you defeated an empire that has conquered the galaxy for 1,000 years. Captain Stone responded from the Vengeance. "We're from a world that tried to kill us every day for millions of years. We learned that sometimes the best defense is a really good attack." The news of the battle spread through the galaxy faster than light itself. For the first time in centuries, someone had not just fought the Krolex Empire, but beaten them completely. And it wasn't some advanced civilization with superweapons. It was a species that most aliens had barely heard of in the depths of space. Other civilizations began to whisper a new word: humans. The Deathworlders had answered a call for help, and what they brought wasn't just rescue. It was something the galaxy had almost forgotten how to do. They brought the will to fight back. The news traveled through the galaxy like wildfire. On every space station, every trading post, every diplomatic center, beings were talking about the same thing. Humans had defeated the Krolex Empire in open battle. The impossible had happened. Ambassador Richard Kim sat in the emergency session of the Galactic Council on the planet Nexus Prime. Around him, representatives from dozens of species were arguing loudly. Some were excited. Others were scared. All of them wanted to know the same thing. What exactly were humans? "This is unacceptable," declared Senator Vorth from the hegemony. The reptilian being's scales were dark with anger. No single species should have this much military power. The humans must be controlled. Controlled? Laughed Ambassador Zinn. From the Traitor Federation. They just freed an entire species from slavery. Maybe we should be thanking them instead of fearing them. Elder Morris from the Altaray Collective raised a thin blue hand. "We have studied the battle recordings. The human tactics make no sense. They fly directly into enemy fire. They board ships while under attack. They fight like they have no fear. Of death. Maybe they don't," Kim said quietly. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to the human representative. "You've all read our planet classification. Earth is listed as a Class 12 Death World. Do you know what that means?" Most of the aliens shook their heads. Death worlds were rare, and most species avoided them completely. Kim stood up and activated a holographic display. Images of Earth appeared in the center of the room. Hurricanes that could destroy cities. Earthquakes that split mountains. Animals that hunted in packs. Volcanoes that could change the weather across entire continents. "This is where we come from," Kim said. "Every day on Earth is a fight to survive. Our weather tries to kill us. Our animals try to eat us. Even our planet's surface moves and shakes beneath our feet. We've been dealing with chaos and danger for our entire evolutionary history. The room was completely quiet now. The aliens stared at the images with a mixture of horror and fascination. So when you ask me why humans fight the way they do, Kim continued, the answer is simple. This is how we've always had to fight. Not from a distance, not with careful plans, but up close and personal. Because that's the only way to survive on a world that's constantly trying to kill you. Meanwhile, in the Zephyrian system, Captain Morrison was trying to understand the strange beings his people had just saved. The Zephyrians looked like living crystals that grew from the ground. They spoke by changing the colors of light inside their bodies, and they could live for thousands of years. Elder Thalmer met with Morrison on the surface of Zephyria Prime. The planet was beautiful, but strange. Instead of trees, tall crystal formations grew everywhere, singing in harmony as the wind passed through them. We still do not understand how you defeated the Kroleks so easily, Thalmer said. His voice sounded like music played on glass instruments. Morrison sat on a crystal bench and tried to explain. It wasn't easy, Elder. We lost good people in that battle. But the Kroleks made a mistake. They expected us to fight like everyone else. How do others fight? Carefully, from far away, with lots of planning and preparation. Most species try to avoid risk and keep their people safe. Thalmer's light pulsed with confusion. That sounds wise. Why do humans not do this? Morrison laughed. Because we can't. On Earth, playing it safe gets you killed. You have to take risks to survive. You have to be willing to get hurt to protect what matters. Dr. Susan Walsh was busy studying both human and Zephyrian biology. She had set up a research station on one of the smaller crystal moons. Her findings were remarkable. Captain, she called Morrison over the radio. You need to see this. I've been comparing human and Zephyrian abilities. We're like opposite sides of the same coin. Morrison traveled to her research station. Walsh showed him her data on holographic screens. Look at this, she said excitedly. Humans are physically tough, adaptable, and aggressive. We heal fast, think quickly under pressure, and never give up. But we're terrible at long-term planning, and we can't store information perfectly. And the Zephyrians? They're physically fragile, but incredibly intelligent. They can store perfect memories for thousands of years, and they can manipulate energy in ways we can't imagine. But they've never had to deal with immediate physical threats. Morrison saw where she was going. You think we could work together? I think we could be amazing together. Human instincts and Zephyrian knowledge. Our ability to adapt and their ability to remember. Our willingness to fight and their wisdom about when to fight. The idea was tested sooner than anyone expected. Long-range sensors detected Krolek ships gathering at the edge of known space. They were assembling a revenge fleet that was 3 times larger than the force that had invaded Zephyria. Colonel Hayes was training the first, mixed human Zephyrian combat units when the warning came. The crystalline beings couldn't match human physical strength, but they had other advantages. Private Torres, Hayes called to one of his Marines, show our new friends how to use the plasma rifle. Torres demonstrated the weapon, while a young Zephyrian named Crystal Song watched carefully. Instead of holding the rifle like a human would, Crystal Song grew crystal extensions from her arms that perfectly matched the weapon's grip. Interesting, she said, her light pulsing with excitement. I can calculate the exact trajectory needed for any target. I never miss. And I can move fast enough to hit targets you can't even see, Torres replied. Want to try working together? The partnership was incredible. Crystal Song would identify targets and calculate firing solutions, while Torres provided mobility and protection. Together, they were more effective than either could be alone. But the real breakthrough came when Dr. Helen Carter made a discovery in the captured Krolex data files. She had been studying their military records, trying to understand how they had conquered so many species. "Captain Morrison," she called over the communication system, "I found something important. The Krolex aren't just building a revenge fleet. They're calling in every ally they have. This isn't just about Zephyria anymore. They see humans as a threat to their entire empire." Morrison felt a chill run down his spine. How big a threat? Big. Enough that they're willing to risk everything to destroy us. The fleet heading for Earth isn't just about revenge. It's about survival. They think if they don't stop us now, we'll eventually stop them. The irony wasn't lost on Morrison. The Krolex had spent centuries making enemies across the galaxy. Now, faced with a species that actually fought back, they were terrified that all their victims might follow the human example. "Helen," Morrison said, "send a message to Earth Command. Tell them the Krolex are coming with everything they have. And tell them something else." "What's that, Captain?" "Tell them we've learned something important out here. Fighting isn't just about being strong or having good weapons. It's about being willing to stand up when someone needs help. The Zephyrians didn't call for the strongest species in the galaxy. They called for the one that would actually answer." As the message traveled toward Earth, the preparations began. Humans and Zephyrians worked together to prepare defenses. Other species watched nervously, waiting to see what would happen when the Krolex Empire's full might met the Deathworlders, who had already proven that sometimes the best way to face overwhelming odds was to charge straight at them. The galaxy was about to learn that chaos, when guided by purpose, could be the most powerful force in the universe. The Krolex Revenge Fleet was the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. 350 warships, led by Emperor Throckmar himself, aboard the massive fortress ship Dominator. The Emperor had ruled the Krolex Empire for over 2,000 years, and he had never lost a war. "Today we crush the Deathworld species," he announced to his fleet commanders. "We will destroy their homeworld and every human in the galaxy. Then we will show the other species what happens when someone dares to challenge the Krolex Empire." The fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system. Emperor Throckmar expected to see a desperate defense around the human homeworld. Instead, he found something that made no sense. "Where is their fleet?" he demanded. His sensor officer checked the readings 3 times. "Sir, we're detecting dozens of ships throughout the system, but most of them appear to be civilian vessels. Cargo haulers, passenger ships, mining craft." "What about their military?" "Only 12 major warships, sir. The same number they had when we first encountered them." Throckmar was confused. Intelligence reports had suggested that humans were preparing for the largest battle in galactic history. Instead, it looked like they were going about their normal business. "Perhaps they have surrendered," suggested Admiral Vexter. "Maybe. They realize they cannot win." But as the Krolex fleet moved deeper into the solar system, strange things began to happen. A cargo ship carrying food supplies suddenly changed course and rammed directly into a Krolex cruiser. The impact destroyed both ships instantly. Was that an accident? Throckmar asked. Before anyone could answer, it happened again. A passenger liner full of human colonists accelerated straight at a Krolex battleship. But this time, just before impact, hundreds of humans in spacesuits jumped out of the liner. They attached themselves to the battleship's hull with magnetic clamps and began cutting holes with industrial tools. "Sir," the communications officer said with panic in his voice, "we're getting reports from across the fleet. Civilian ships are attacking us everywhere." Admiral Lisa Brooks sat in the command center deep inside Luna Base, watching the battle unfold on her screens. She had activated something called the Terran Protocol, a defense plan that most of her own officers thought was insane. "Admiral," her aide said nervously, Are you sure about this? We're asking civilians to fight a military fleet. Brooks smiled grimly. Lieutenant, every human is a civilian until someone threatens their family. Then they become something else entirely. The Terran Protocol turned every human in the solar system into a potential weapon. Asteroid miners used their industrial equipment to launch rocks at near-light speed. Space construction workers flew their workships directly at enemy vessels. Even pleasure yachts had been loaded with volunteers and sent into battle. Captain Jenny Walsh commanded a squadron of converted civilian ships. Her flagship was a luxury cruise liner that had been filled with Marines and turned into a boarding craft. This is Chaos Squadron, she announced over the radio. Remember, we're not trying to win a fair fight. We're trying to win, period. The Kroleks had never faced anything like this. They were used to fighting other military forces with predictable tactics and careful strategies. But humans didn't fight like that. They fought like their entire civilization was at stake, because it was. A mining vessel called the Rockhopper, normally used to collect asteroids, had been loaded with nuclear explosives. Its captain, a grizzled old spacer named Pete Johnson, flew it directly into the center of the Kroleks formation. "This is for my grandkids," he radioed as he activated the timer. The explosion took out 5 enemy ships and damaged a dozen more. Emperor Throckmur watched his carefully planned invasion turn into chaos. How are they doing this? These aren't soldiers. These are farmers and workers and shopkeepers. His science advisor studied the battle data. "Sir, I believe we fundamentally misunderstood what humans are. We thought they were a military species with a few warships. But they're not. They're an entire civilization that can fight." The truth was becoming clear. Other species had armies. Humans were an army. Every single one of them was willing to fight when their homes were threatened. But the real surprise came when the Zephyrians arrived. Crystal Song, now leading a squadron of hybrid ships, brought reinforcements that the Kroleks had never seen before. The crystalline beings had learned human tactics and combined them with their own abilities. "This is Crystal Song to all human vessels." Her musical voice came over the communication system. "We have arrived to stand with our friends." Behind her came ships from a dozen other species. The Altari had brought their medical vessels, but they were loaded with combat volunteers. The Trader Federation had armed their cargo ships. Even some former Krolek slave species had joined the fight. Ambassador Kim watched from the diplomatic station as species after species joined the battle. "They're not just fighting for us," he realized. "They're fighting for the idea that you can fight back." The battle turned into a running fight throughout the solar system. Human ingenuity combined with alien technology created combinations that no military manual had ever considered. Zephyrian energy manipulation powered human weapons. Altari medical knowledge kept human fighters alive in impossible situations. Trader Federation logistics kept everyone supplied. Emperor Throckmur found his mighty fleet scattered and confused. Every time his ships tried to form up for a proper battle, some new group of crazy humans would attack from an unexpected direction. "Sir," his flagship's captain reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the human homeworld." Admiral Brooks appeared on the screen. Behind her, the command center was busy with activity. "Emperor Throckmur, this is Admiral Brooks of the Earth Defense Force. You came here to destroy us. Instead, you've shown the galaxy something important." "What? Is that human?" "You've shown them that bullies can be beaten, that empires can fall, that sometimes all it takes is someone willing to stand up and fight back." Around the solar system, the battle was ending. The Kroleks fleet was in full retreat. Many of their ships damaged or destroyed. But more importantly, their reputation was broken. The empire that had conquered the galaxy for 1,000 Years had been defeated twice by the same small species. Captain Morrison, now commanding a mixed human-Zephyrian task force, pursued the retreating Krolex ships. This is Captain Morrison. To all Krolex vessels, you are no longer welcome in this part of the galaxy. Spread the word to your empire. The age of conquest is over. In the weeks that followed, the Krolex Empire began to collapse. Species that had been enslaved for centuries declared their independence. Worlds that had been strip-mined began to rebuild. The galaxy started to look different. Dr. Helen Carter, who had decoded the first desperate message, was now helping to establish new diplomatic relations with dozens of freed species. She often thought about how it all started with a simple cry for help. "It's funny," she told Captain Morrison during one of their meetings. "The Zephyrians called for help because they heard we were from a death world. They thought that made us good at fighting. Weren't they right?" Morrison asked. Helen smiled. "They were right about the fighting part. But that's not why we answered their call. We answered because we know what it's like to be in trouble with nowhere else to turn. We know what it's like when everything seems hopeless. And we know that sometimes when everything seems impossible, that's exactly when you have to try anyway." The galaxy had learned something important. When the innocent called for help, and that call reached Deathworlders, what came wasn't just chaos. It was hope with teeth, compassion with claws, and justice delivered by people who had learned that the only way to deal with a dangerous universe was to be more dangerous than it was. In the end, the Krolex had been right about one thing. Humans were chaos. But they were the kind of chaos that cleaned up the mess left by bullies and gave the galaxy's children a chance to grow up free.